You don't need a fancy smoker to produce great barbecue. You just need some time and the right technique. Today I'm going to show you how to produce the best bite in barbecue over a charcoal grill, and it's not a brisket. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dishes and Fishes, where I show you how to cook and set hooks. Beef ribs, I think, are a seriously misunderstood and underrated cut of beef. The main reason I think that they're better than brisket on a charcoal smoker is that they only take 6 hours to reach prime tenderness and smokiness, compared to a brisket taking 12 or even more hours, which can be difficult to manage on a charcoal grill. And not only do you get a really good product in 6 hours, beef ribs are actually really cheap. So let's get into this. So I got this rack of beef ribs at Costco. As you can see, it weighs about 4 to 5 pounds, and it cost a whopping $4.29 a pound, which is ridiculously cheap for food nowadays. So to get started with this prep, we're going to lay our beef ribs out, and we need to remove the membranes first. So I like to take my knife and just make an incision on one of the bones, and then I like to grab the loose membrane that I created and peel it off with a paper towel. Removing this membrane on beef ribs is way more important than on pork ribs, because the pork rib membrane I found kind of just disintegrates sometimes, whereas this beef rib membrane can get really tough when you eat it. One other thing that I think a lot of people on the internet do that I think is sometimes unnecessary is put a binder on their meat, and a lot of the time they use mustard. I find that that's unnecessary unless you love the flavor of mustard. What's really important when it comes to smoking meat is that your meat is wet. So throughout the cooking process, we're going to spray this rack of beef ribs with beef broth. Aside from maintaining a wet cooking environment, the next most important thing is the rub, and we're going to be using good old Montreal steak seasoning, which I think is one of the best rubs out there for beef especially. So prepping this rack is really simple. We're going to just spray it generously with our beef broth. We're going to season the underside lightly with Montreal because it can be a little bit salty. Top side, we're going to do the same thing, spray generously with beef broth, and we're going to season the top side a little bit more generously with our Montreal, and that is it. Super easy. Now let's set up our charcoal grill. I'm going to start by lighting 8 to 10 lumps of charcoal in my charcoal chimney. This is what I'm using, not the briquettes. This stuff burns the longest. And I'm going to take my blowtorch and just light one of the corners of one of the pieces of charcoal, and that's really all you need to do, and then it'll spread amongst the rest. Now let's arrange our charcoal grill for smoking, and I also went over this in my pork rib smoking video. First thing we're going to do is put our bottom pan in. The next thing we're going to do is put our water pan in, which again aids to a wet cooking environment. This is going to produce steam throughout the cook. And I actually got this pan from an old smoker. A lot of you guys asked me where I got this in one of my other videos. For our charcoal arrangement, we're going to put the coals around the water pan in a snake formation, and I like to just shake the grill back and forth a little bit so that they can nestle down into the crack the whole way. And the idea here is that these coals will burn very slowly in sort of like a fuse pattern. They'll burn along the length of this ring that we're setting up. You don't need this, but it makes the ribs way better. Some sort of wood smoke. We're going to actually be using a cold smoker in which I'm going to put in mesquite wood chips. If you don't have a cold smoker, you can put your wood chips right on the charcoals like I demonstrated in my pork rib smoking video. I'm going to put my water in my water pan, and again, this is going to produce steam and maintain a moist cooking environment. Smoke sticks way better to wet meat, which is why you want to keep the meat wet. Once my charcoals are white, I'm going to just carefully place them on the beginning of my ring, followed by my top grate. I'm going to put my cold smoker on the top of the top grate, and I'm going to light it with my blowtorch until it produces blue smoke. And that's it. That's kind of the basic setup if you're going to do smoking on a charcoal grill. I'm going to leave the lid off of that for about 5 minutes just so that charcoal and that wood can get nice and burning. It doesn't really matter if the grill is hot when you put the meat in either, because cold meat will actually attract more smoke as well. So when I put my beef in, I'm going to actually be putting it on top of foil just to protect the underside from getting any black burnt bits. And when you put your beef in there, you want to make sure that it's not directly above the coals. We are going to move it throughout the cook. Once it's on there, I'm going to spray it once more with my beef broth, and then honestly, you're pretty much done. You're free to live your life and do boat stuff with your dog if you choose to. We're going to check this meat every hour. So 1 hour into the cook, I'm going to just take the lid off, spray it with beef broth, and put the lid back on. My cold smoker also went out, so I'm going to go ahead and relight that. But again, the hardest part of this recipe is already done. So 2 hours into the cook, I'm actually going to rotate the rack 180 degrees so the opposite side is facing the warmest part of the smoker. Eventually you'll notice that the meat will start to retract away from these bones. You can see here it has not done that. That's how you know that this beef still has a long way to go. After another hour of smoke, I will check it. 3 hours into the cook, I'm going to spray it again with beef broth. You can start to see here 3 hours in, the bones are starting to be exposed. It's probably cooked at this point, but it's not tender. Back on the smoker it goes. 4 hours into the cook, I don't think I had quite enough charcoal left in my grill to last me another 2 hours, so I carefully removed my grate, slid all of my burnt charcoal to the bottom, and then I started another mini charcoal line with probably 15 to 20 lumps of charcoal. Nothing crazy, just enough to get me through 2 more hours. I also went ahead and topped off my water pan while I did that. Once she's all set, I'm going to spray her again with more beef broth, put the lid back on for another 30 minutes of smoke. So at this point, she's been smoking for 4.5 hours over the charcoal and wood cold smoker. The last hour and a half of the cook, the ribs actually need to be wrapped. So you can wrap this in foil or butcher's paper. I also like to add butter inside my wrap just because I love the taste of butter with beef. Completely optional. You can add sauce or some type of glaze if you wish. Put whatever extras you would like inside your wrap. Make sure it's sealed completely tight. And this is going to create a delectable meat braising environment inside this wrap to ensure maximum tenderness on these ribs. I'll put that back on the charcoal. If your cold smoker is out, it doesn't matter. At this point, it's received plenty of smoke. An hour and a half later, we have reached 6 hours total of cook time. You can actually leave it on for 7 if you want, but 6, it will be plenty tender enough. For those of you that are perfectionists, you can temp check your meat, and it should at least be 200 degrees. This temperature will ensure that maximum collagen melting has occurred inside of the meat, and you're going to let that rest on your counter for at least 45 minutes before slicing. After 45 minutes, you can unwrap it. It should be cooled down, and it should be tender AF. I'm going to carefully remove that and place that onto my cutting board. And as you can see here, that little bit of technique that we implemented throughout the cooking process has left these beef ribs with an absolutely epic bark. You can see how tender this rack of ribs is. Check out that smoke ring, very nice. And I'm telling you guys, these beef ribs are restaurant quality. If I was served these beef ribs at any local barbecue restaurant, I would be more than happy. They would get a 10 out of 10 from me. They would get a 12 out of 10 for me. It's really not a lot of effort. It's just a little bit of time and some nurturing throughout the cooking process. And I'm telling you, it's completely worth it. So if you're new to the barbecue smoke game, if you have a charcoal grill, or if you just want a delicious beef product in only 6 hours, definitely give this recipe a try. The best bite in barbecue. Try it and let me know. Thanks for watching, guys.